All right, cool. So how's it going, everyone? Welcome to this month's GGDA meeting. I'm Ryan Mendes. I'm one of the co-presidents for the Orion Chapter. This is Paul. He's the other co-president sitting in the front row. Woo! Cool. So thanks everybody for coming out to check this out. Thanks for the panelists for coming out as well to provide something awesome for us. So I'm gonna do a couple of quick announcements that I'm sort of doing it live, so don't judge too harshly. So first up, we are doing SimFest is this Saturday at Columbus State University. That is the Columbus Interactive Media Festival. That is going from 8:30 to 5:30 p.m. and it's got a bunch of industry and entertainment industry talks. Do you have any more details you want to throw that way?
Just there's going to be some people that might be worth noting that's going to be there. Jesse James Allen, the former EA sound director, is going to be there giving a keynote speech. Scarlett Dangerfield, the high-res hiring lady, is going to be there as well.
And our very own Andrew Greenberg is going to be there.
Andrew Greenberg and Matt Frank are also going to be there giving talks as well. So if you're interested, go down. It's only $5 to be getting a passage there. If you're a member, at $8 otherwise. So it should be cheap. The only thing is that it's going to be a hell of a drive.
It's only about an hour, a little over an hour. And on Saturday, there's no problems with that drive. And Jesse James Allen has made a specific game for the event. What is he calling it? The game of working at a AAA. And it's actually really fun. Everything's posted online so far. It looks really good. So if you can go to Columbus on Saturday, it should be an excellent event. And if anyone in Columbus is watching the live stream right now, scream loud enough so we can hear you. Good, heard you.
Cool, so we'll share that link again once on the GGDA Facebook page if you guys want to check that out, just so it's up to date. So next announcement, Siege pricing increases and early registration's happening July 15th. So what is that? That's Friday. So if you guys are planning on going to Siege, go ahead and register now so you go and get your pricing in early before the prices go up and all that sweet stuff. Next up, next GGDA meeting is going to be August 9th at KSU Marietta in the Q building. We don't have a subject on that yet, but details are forthcoming. Last thing, okay, I said that was the last thing. This is the actual last thing. As you guys know, Molly Prophet's going to be holding the Game Studio Smackdown once again. She's just waiting on final confirmation on the venue and all that timing and stuff, so no real announcement right now other than to say we haven't forgotten about it, but that'll be out, details on that real soon. I think, where's Ian?
Ian's doing the long rock star walk to the front.
All right, so next up, Ian's got some more announcements. This is Ian Philpott. He's technical evangelist for Microsoft, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about that and Flatiron building where you guys are at.
Cool. Thank you, Ryan.
Yes, sir.
All right. Like you said, my name's Ian, and I work here at Microsoft, and this is our Innovation Center. We've partnered with FlatironCity. Essentially, we've branded the building. We staff a few Microsoft folks here throughout the week to work with startups and different companies in the building. We've provided all the technology and that sort of thing. So what is FlatironCity? FlatironCity is a next generation office space. Anyone's interested, I can give some tours later on this evening. We can go up to 7 and 8 and have a look at those office spaces. It's kind of like a month-to-month place where you can start out on like a hot seat for like $350 a month and kind of graduate up to an assigned seat and then go on to your office, and each kind of price varies. The nice thing about it is you don't have to sign a contract, right? You can just come in, I've got $350 for the month, I don't have it next month. It's, nothing to worry about. And there's some flyers and things like that for FlatironCity.
They're in the back of the room, so feel free to grab them when you go out if you need them or you know someone else who'd be interested.
If they run out, there's more at the front as well, so let one of us know, we can hook you guys up.
Yeah, and they've got, 2 gigs fiber. Pretty awesome.
If you just want to tell people this is your office, it's $45 for a day to impress a client.
Exactly. Thursday, they're doing like a bourbon testing for developers. If you like bourbon and you want to do a bourbon tasting, they have it here. We do events and things like that. I used to be on one of the engineering teams at Microsoft, so I am actually a software developer. I have not ever done game development, but I really appreciate the guys and gals that do. You have wasted many hours of my time bringing me full enjoyment, so I appreciate that. And now we're doing VR. First time I put on VR headset. I can only describe it as joy, I think. It is like, wow, this is something new for real. So
I have the pictures for that if anybody's interested.
yeah, it was right here in this room.
Pretty good stuff.
Yeah, I hold office hours. If you're interested in Microsoft stuff or even open source stuff, I handle that on Tuesdays. I don't dive too much into Unity, but it is something that's kind of getting pushed onto my plate a little bit, and I'm starting to kind of talk to my guy a little bit, like, hey, what's this button do? You know, that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's it for me. Thanks for the opportunity to have you guys out. We can do it more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's.
Thanks for the pizza and the steak. Thank you, Ian, Microsoft, and Flatiron City. So Gaspar and I are actually going to be co-moderating. I'm going to start things off, and later on he's got a few of the more technical questions he wants to fire off. So we might share seats. We got a little cramped up here, so we'll figure out a way to make this space work. So Ian talked about how the first time he put on VR headset, he felt joy. The first time I put them on, I felt like vomiting. So that's definitely one of the issues we're going to be discussing today. And I'm really, really happy to have this lineup of speakers. Because while they're all working in virtual reality and they're all doing very interesting projects in it, and they have some very definite crossover in what they're doing, they're also taking very unique approaches, and they're having to do some unique problem solving. So VR has been all over the place recently. In the last 2 years, you've not been able to go to a conference without a presentation on here's how we think you should do VR games. So what I'm happy about is now we have people who can come up and say, here's how we have done VR games. Here's what we've been doing. Here's how we've been working on them. Here are the things we've learned that worked. And here are the things we have learned that really did not work. So I would like to start just by having each of our panelists introduce themselves as well as the project they're working on. And then we're going to go into a discussion of just one thing that you learned that you wish you had known when you started. Orion, you want to go ahead and kick it off?
Sure. I'm Orion Cherry from Pulseworks. I run the content development department there. Pulseworks deploys motion ride experiences, ticketed motion rides, to museums and just general entertainment sites like Boardwalk on the Beach in South Carolina and National Smithsonian Air and Space Museum and the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, places like that. So we charge a ticket price and we put them in a simulator, and those simulators can be interactive, like a full 360-degree spinning dogfight simulator where you're shooting each other down, or a passive ride where you're just going on a ride film, and that's a 3-axis motion base. So now we've gotten into VR and married the two together, motion platforms and VR, and had extremely good results.
John?
Yeah, I'm John Gibson. I'm president of Tripwire Interactive. You probably know us from the Killing Floor franchise or the Red Orchestra games.
Or their Siege opening night party.
Or our Siege parties,
Yeah.
if you remember them. and yeah, we announced recently we're working on Killing Floor Incursion, which is our first VR game. So, happy to talk about it.
Excellent. And Rob?
My name is Rob Sheps. I own a VR studio called Furious Union, and this year we launched our first game for the Gear VR called Mega Space Hole. And thank you, the one person that bought it. And happy to talk to you about it.
And Gaspar, you want to quickly introduce yourself?
My name is Gaspar Ferreiro. I'm basically just a VR tinkerer, and I'm working. I work for Project Ghost Studios, and we just basically have a game called Project Ghost, which should be launching for HTC Vive hopefully within a couple of months.
So I'm going to act as moderator. He's going to be a bit more interlocutor, I think is the term, where he responds based off the tech questions and his own experiences. But
Just
really
quick, if you guys could project a little bit more, at the back of the room there's an air conditioner. It's a little hard.
there are more seats available up front.
You guys should definitely move up.
Yeah, that got a big rush.
Slow down.
Don't be shy. Somebody can take my seat if you don't want.
So if you all would like to jump on the subject, because I have found it very interesting watching people come out of GDC and other places and saying, here's how we're going to do VR. It's going to be so easy and everybody's going to jump on this. It's going to be incredible. And it's been several years since those first presentations, and there's still so few good VR games out. Some great prototypes, but so few actually launched titles. So I'd love just, what is the number one thing you wish you had known when you started? Orion.
Well, I wish I'd known that the release versions of the Vive and Oculus would be so limited and inflexible in terms of boundary control and, chaperone systems and all this kind of stuff, and wish it'd been delivered a little sooner so we could get our deployment out with those instead of DK2s. But
You guys did launch with the development kit.
we launched with DK2s,
Wow.
that's right, and have interesting stories to tell about the magnometer and drift and all kinds of stuff that happens when you put your experience in something like a Faraday cage or something
wow.
that might actually affect the magnetic field. But yeah, so hardware release versions of the software, I wish I'd known a bit more about that beforehand. But
Right.
that's the big thing.
So the timeline and the tech specs were not what you expected.
Right.
in either case.
I was certainly planning for twice the resolution. I was finding the content and optimization side, but when it came to actually deploying this headset with the software at our own site and our own computers, yeah, there were some issues. Because originally we were going to deploy the Vives, we just got them in the last minute.
So was it the time that was the main issue, or the fact they weren't working well with the ride setup and the actual
Right.
ride?
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't really need translation tracking
Okay.
on a motion platform with someone seated, in their chair. So we couldn't disentangle the two. If you go outside of a boundary, or if you try to have no lighthouses, there's no setting for that. And we didn't have time to dig into the OpenVR software to make a custom runtime.
So you put in more rules for the riders when they get in the car to begin with.
Yeah, we're taking the Vives down there soon, and we're going to be putting them in and just having lighthouses up to track them for now and see how well that works out. So.
John, what did you guys learn that you wish you'd known at the beginning?
It's probably the thing everybody realizes is what's gonna make you sick. In Star Wars, many Bothans died to get the plans for the Death Star. And at Tripwire, many stomachs were sacrificed and many lunches were lost to learn what we learned.
They're across from a mellow mushroom.
Yes. So I think everybody walks into VR with, kind of cocky about this. It's like, oh, I hear this movement thing. It's unsolvable. Well, we'll solve it. And we'll find some way to do it. And we tried for quite a while. Just moving around like with gamepad. Move like a normal first-person shooter. Made you really nauseous. So then we said, well, we'll just make sure. We did a prototype. We're going to make a game where it's all about moving really slow and you're just kind of exploring this environment. There's not a whole lot of combat, and if you move slow enough, we won't make you sick. And there have been some games that have limited success with that, but we really found that in any kind of remotely realistic environment, it just didn't work. And here's where you run into some of the problems. Staircases. Staircases are evil. I know many an afternoon I lay on a couch wishing I was dead from walking up and down staircases in VR. Just saying, I'll never do that again. Staircases are bad. Falling off of ledges is also very bad. We had a puzzle where the player had to stack up a bunch of crates and reach about a second story to get a key. And early on we're we're working on this thing, and you get up there and then I got to the very top and I was trying to get the key and I fell like 15 feet. And I was like, falling feels so terrible.
It's bad enough in Minecraft.
What's that?
It's bad enough in Minecraft.
Yeah.
Bad enough in Minecraft.
So the other things about motion sickness that you learn. So a lot of the things that you do, I'll give you another example that's really, really bad. One of the things we do on a lot of our first-person shooters is when the player dies, we have the camera attached to their ragdoll of their head.
Ooh.
In VR, that's terrible. The monster hits you and the camera starts spinning like this. That was the first time I actually ripped the headset off.
This is supposed to be
No. So yeah, if we had known that, yes, we're not going to be we're not, at least not very easily going to solve movement and nausea. that would have been good to know early on.
Rob?
Well, I feel so much better because we did the exact same thing. I really thought, wow, were we really that cocky that we thought we could solve locomotion? And that was absolutely the first thing we tried to do. We're like, oh, come on. I can't believe it hasn't been figured out yet. We can do this. And spent a good, probably 4 or 5 months feeling like we were going to throw up all the time. Human beings don't strafe. You strafe all the time in video games in front of a screen, but if you do it in VR, it is an instant vomit experience. Don't strafe. And staircases, the same kind of thing. We actually did a platformer simulation, same kind of a thing. It was like, you got about halfway up, and then we slid one of the platforms out from underneath you. If you didn't make it just in time, fall about 2 stories. Whoa, just cold sweats, and it takes a good 45 minutes to get over a bad VR experience. Don't do it. Yeah, respect the player, respect the comfort level of the player. And that's once we finally got over that moment and realized we are not going to figure this out. Let's stick with what we know or what we've learned, and keep the player still and bring the entertainment to them. We were happier, and we've got a lot of positive response because we didn't move.
Someone's got to get nauseous on the new frontier, though.
It's true, it's true.
It's treading new territory.
Yep.
So.
I have to admit, of all the topics we've ever discussed at GGDA meetings, this is the most vomit discussion we've had to date. But I'm also interested in some of the technical limitations you guys have been talking about. First of all, on how to keep up with the changing technology. We've gotten kind of used to the idea that NVIDIA and Microsoft will let us know a couple years out before big changes are coming that we need to adjust for. And there'll be little things, but you can fix them pretty quickly. But in this case, it really is the hardware and software is moving so quickly and changing so dramatically. I don't think we've seen anything like this since, I don't know, like when we shifted from DOS to Windows.
Oh, yeah.
So if anyone wants to jump on that, how are you predicting dealing with the changes?
Well, I mean, just to mirror what you're saying, 0.8 to 1.3 in Oculus software is a massive change. Massive change in terms of what developers could do with that software.
Like
so,
what?
In terms of them marrying the systems together for one, rotation and translation tracking were married in 1.3. They didn't have to be operating at the same time prior to that. So you didn't have to have a motion tracker in front of you, or the whole system would fail. So in the future, what do I predict? I mean, it's hopefully more flexibility for developers to do more with the software and the hardware. I know, Steam says that their headset is great for tinkerers, and it sort of is. I mean, you've got one USB port that supports power. I don't know about information transfer, but that's all stuff that will improve. And on the Steam side, I think that's where all the action is going to be for developers because of OpenVR. And we've got other competitors coming out, like Razer with their headset, their OpenVR Razer. And I saw there's a Twitter feed from the technical guy over at Steam, over at Valve, sorry, who had actually taken one of those headsets and gotten it to work with the lighthouses, just of his own accord. So, something like that where you can build something customized from base up will be good for us, not as good for these guys because they're some of the consumers instead of creating their own sort of, their own box for people to pay a ticket price and walk into.
Now, what about the tech changes for Tripwire?
For us, we're making if you don't know, we're making a game for the Oculus Touch. So we've gone through several iterations of the touch hardware. From the early versions with the battery life of about 15 seconds to the later versions that are much more robust. So just dealing with very, very early hardware, hardware that is we're all we're programmers, technical people, but when you get into updating firmware and the firmware fails and you have to to somehow figure out how to get new firmware on the device and some of those early just any hardware things give you challenges. I think for us some of the biggest, or I guess most interesting, exciting, and scary things that we see is just how quickly everybody is developing technology that allows you to render more stuff on the screen in VR. It's really, the technology is such a moving target. I mean, we're using Unreal Engine 4 for our VR game, and in just the last version, not 4.12 but 4.11, they added instant stereo rendering, which sped up the rendering in VR a lot. So you sort of had this budget of how much stuff you could render, and then you're developing levels and environments with that in mind. It's like, oh wow, now you can render, it's 40% faster. It's like, okay, so now so it keeps getting faster, and the video card manufacturers are coming out with technology.
Yeah, 980 to the 980 Ti to now 1080.
Yeah, NVIDIA just announced their 1060 that's faster than a 980 Ti for $250. It's the entry level VR card. But one of the things that I'm most excited about, we've been working with, I hope I can talk about this, I hope nobody at NVIDIA gets mad, I think it's public, but they have their multi-res shading, some of the technology they developed. And whenever I hear a technology partner, tell, it's going to speed up, your rendering this much, I'm always like, yeah, whatever. Sure, you always say that. And in this exact situation,
Right.
if you're standing on one foot and the moon is in its apex, then maybe you'll get that frame rate. But we tried it out, and if you don't know what multi-res shading is, essentially, when you're in VR, if you're, let's say your goggles, you have to render to a space about like this. What the game actually renders is something like this, and then it projects it into a shape that is what you see in your lenses. But you waste a lot of the space around the edges because the information just gets lost. But also you can really only see clearly pretty much towards the center and a little bit towards the outside of the center in your VR glasses. So multi-res shading, what it does, it essentially renders the scene at a lower resolution at the edges and at a higher resolution towards the center. So you actually get a really nice bump in frame rate from doing that. And I was sitting there using it and turning it off, turning it on. I was like trying to look at the edge of the corner of my eye, saying, "Can I really tell it's on?" And I really couldn't tell the difference. But so that tech's really early. But I think that's going to help. Like all of these things, first generation of VR games, everything people are rendering is pretty basic, but I think even by the end of the year, we're going to start seeing some really visually exciting things in VR.
You're safe too. That was at GDC. They presented that.
Okay.
So you're good to go.
I think they want me to talk about it.
The NVIDIA cops won't be.
Rob?
Well, actually, our pain points are much more software based than, because these guys are working with we're working on the phones, so it doesn't shift quite as quickly in terms of the hardware spec. But for software, whatever version of Unity you think you're starting out in is not going to be the one that you ship in. And so for us, it was really, we got started out early on, and we kept doing this really, and I'm sure most game designers know better than to do this, but I'm a creative by nature, and so I always want the cool new hot thing that's going to make my stuff look better. So I started doing feature chasing, where the next patch had that one cool thing that I really thought I had to have for the game, and quickly learned that was a recipe for disaster, and that we needed to just settle on the software version that the platform was running on, and stick with it and get as far as we could, and try to launch on that. We usually got within one or two versions of that, but that was a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah, shiny is always so nice.
Absolutely.
Yep. In the future.
Yep.
Yeah. And the other thing with Unity, if you're a small team, you're probably using a lot of plugins.
Right.
If you're using plugins from third parties.
Absolutely.
And it's all chained together. It's in one big nightmare.
Yep.
One good change knocks it all out. Well, we've talked about the headsets. Let's talk about controllers, because you all are doing controls in different ways. But that's always the secret. Everything's VR is great because you can look and see everything like it's real, but somehow you have to interact with it. So if you guys want to touch a little bit on what you learned implementing controls for players, what can they do, what you wanted them completely not able to do, even from opening interface to endgame. Rob, you want to start on that?
Yeah. So for our, actually, this was kind of a big deal for us because, so we're using the Gear VR, which has the touchpad on the side, but our game was entirely vision based. We didn't want you to have to hit the trigger every single time you wanted to shoot. So really, as your gaze passes over the enemies, they explode. And it's very intense and happens very quickly. We don't want you just doing this rapid fire thing. But we didn't like the idea that you had to do the timeout for the vision trigger, where you wanted to, so if it was a purely visual based interface and you're waiting for timeouts on each menu, it's like, okay, I've stared at that for a second, then I've acknowledged that I want to look at that. It slowed the experience way down. And so we kind of figured out early on that we wanted to balance that, like, so sometimes you're going to be using the touch controller to acknowledge how you get through the menu systems, but once you actually start gameplay, it was entirely vision based. We went through a lot of iterations on that of trying to figure out the sweet spot of, wait, do you know that now that the game is launched, you don't actually have to tap anymore? And not entirely sure we've actually nailed that down, to be honest. Like, I think there's, usually when we demo the game, there's still a few people who are continually tapping, like, no, you don't have to be tapping. So it's definitely a pain point in terms of making that shift from one kind of learning how to navigate in the space. And, we could take the entirely vision-based approach. I'm still struggling with that one. I don't know if that's the right way to go or not. I know it was frustrating for me to just wait for menus to time out, and maybe there is a better way to do that. But right now we're combining touch-based navigation with a vision-based game, and so trying to find that sweet spot in between.
Somebody was joking about wanting to make the Three Stooges game, so you constantly have fingers coming to drive, them tapping on the headset. I could do it too. Well, John, any thoughts on your controls are pretty sweet in the trailer?
Yeah, so some of the challenges that we've run into with controllers, I mean, if any of you've used the Vive or the Oculus Touch, you have the ability to basically interact with your environment with your hands, which really increases the sense of presence. If you haven't heard that term, it basically is the feeling that you're really there. One of the challenges that we ran into, well, actually, just let me ask this question. How many people in here are really good at throwing things and hitting very small objects very far away, like a baseball pitcher? Okay, 3, 4 of you? Okay, the rest of the world is
More than I expected.
Okay, so we had a mechanic in our game, and one of the things we tried where we're trying to throw knives and hit monsters with them. And what we found is most people aren't very good at throwing things and hitting things. So working on that problem, right now we're still kind of experimenting, but right now I think what we've settled on is kind of this hybrid of it kind of goes where you're looking, like if you're, unless you're, you won't throw it and have it go like this. But if I'm looking at this and I throw it, I'm going to kind of hit that thing. So learning, actually, I guess that's really a broader subject, is learning that all of the things for years that we've faked in video games, being really accurate and shooting at stuff, not everyone's a good marksman either. You basically have a different curve. Those of us that are developing the game, we're playing it all day and we're shooting the heads off of monsters at 100 yards, and then we put it on somebody who hasn't been playing it for 8 hours that day, and we find that not everybody's a good real-world marksman. So just dealing with some of those physical constraints are interesting. The other thing, with touch, you have the cameras in front of you. So if you, one of the issues that it's interesting, when we started working on touch, you kind of feel like, okay, somebody will have already solved this. You go online, you look at videos, you Google, like how do you solve rotating away from the camera? And what we found is, hey, nobody has solved this. So we created a system that we call guardrails. It's kind of like our touch version of Chaperone. But basically, when the player rotates away from the cameras, when they reach a certain threshold, like a translucent wall starts to fade in behind them. If they go too far, it pauses the game and kind of has an arrow that's like, hey, look back that direction. It's real simple, but it's funny. We tried it out and it worked. We showed it to the Oculus people, and they were like, wow, this is a really good solution. But that just, it's not too intrusive. But it keeps them facing the action.
It's always funny when more player control actually gives them the illusion that they have more freedom, that they're able to do more. They're not futzing around, not knowing what to do. I am curious, in testing, did anyone actually throw the controllers when they were trying to throw the knife?
Nobody's.
That's why you have
the rest.
Nobody's thrown the controllers, but I have a dent in my wall. That's the reason why we have the guardrail system. Because in one particular testing session, I was trying to chop the head off of a monster. I promise I won't hit you. But if the cameras are over here, and I'm swinging as hard as I can and smash into the wall and put a big dent in the wall. And, Fortunately, the touch controllers, if you haven't seen, they have this big plastic thing around the outside. So
Protect your knuckles. Yeah, I've done that, but with putting objects down. So in Job Simulator, when you pick something up and you're going to put something down on your desk, I'll just drop the controller. That was very compelling. I was just, wow, I just did that. So throwing not as much, but definitely setting objects down.
yeah, that's actually funny you mention that, because that's another thing that we saw when we had objects in the world like guns that you have to you point at and then you press a button to grab them. And if you've held a touch control in your hand, if you haven't seen one, they have this button that's right under these fingers. That's kind of like when you're holding it, you're always touching it. And the things that you think that people in real life, I'm not gonna. You pick this up, and when you want, and if it's in your hand, you don't just let go of it. But people as soon as they put those VR glasses on, it feels like a game to them to a degree. So they would pick guns up, and then they would just let go of the button, and the guns fall.
Especially if you're simulating hands, virtual hands.
Yes.
Yep, right.
That's their new reality.
And we had virtual hands, and everybody's just dropping their guns, and then monsters are eating their face off. They're trying to punch monsters to death. They're fighting giant monsters and just trying to hit them.
I actually think dropping guns, first time I tried Bullet Train, first time I had the hand controller, that was actually the hardest thing for me, was actually putting guns down. Just such an odd experience.
Yeah. Because you're getting that tactile feedback.
Too, with the way the controllers are designed, like did you try the pinching? Like if you
Yeah.
try to pick up a bullet and actually,
Yep.
but
throw
your
the bullet.
hand is
that was actually
already
easier to me than
in
than
this
that.
form, and trying to figure out the right way to do that, it's kind of like, well, my hand is already bent in this direction, so it's definitely relearning of how to use your hands in that space.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things I love about VR is the interesting interfaces it's allowing, like
Sure.
grabbing bullets and throwing them, grabbing rockets and throwing the rockets back. Are you experiencing any new interface controls you can't do with games you want to share? Any new ways to do things? I mean, just tapping is a different way and feels very Cyclops from X-Men.
That game will be coming out soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's the perfect one for it. But how are you guys handling any sort of player interface with the ride?
Yeah, no, I mean, phase one is definitely just getting the VR experience out there, because a big part of us deploying rides is selling the museum staff the suits on letting us in and having this experience. So getting a deployment out there working, getting positive feedback from another fellow institute is really important. So we don't have anything with direct input or interactivity, but we are using an Unreal 4 engine, so we can do that without too much of a problem. But I mean, for us, I guess something relevant on the topic would be, our problem with tracking them with lighthouses when they're getting moved around the platform and they're in a row of 4 people and this one's in front of this one, and can we get them at all angles? So that's probably the biggest challenge right now at this point. We've demoed some interactive stuff. But we don't have the same challenges as these guys, because we just build our own interface. If we want just a button, or we can add multiple multiple inputs, we can do multiple things on that route. But we've had, just look targets on a roller coaster. Look targets, shoot something out. You're looking at it, bam, it gets shot. Push a button because you're looking in the direction.
I'd like to explore a different question that you brought up with that. I thought actually your Unity house. I mean, you've done most of your past development in Unity, or much of your past development. Do you mind talking about why you chose Unreal? I'd love to get your feedback also on why you chose the engine you guys chose.
Sure. I mean, my background's in Unreal 3. That's where I got my start. And all throughout the 7 years we worked with Unity, they never had a damn timeline editor that was good enough. That was as good as Matinee was in 3 even. So knowing that this project was basically going to be a huge cutscene, 3.5-minute cutscene, Unreal 4 became, the choice in my mind, and it paid off. I wouldn't have been able to learn the system and do the content in a month and a half with Unity using Director or their other plugins, because this was just before Unity released their new timeline editor. So that was the major reason. And they've got, I think, better optimization out of the box too. They may be in deferred instead of linear, which is supposedly not as good for VR. But I tell you, I mean, the scene that we have running at 70 frames per second, I just can't imagine in Unity hitting those same marks. With things like material instancing, you can have one material, get one draw call for all of its 40 children. So.
And John, you guys are traditionally Unreal House, but this is your first UE4 title, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for us using UE4 for this, it kind of started out of necessity, because when we first started working on the VR, really, in the studio we're cranking away trying to get our PlayStation 4 version of Killing Floor 2 done. So everybody's working on that. This VR thing, everybody's we want to do VR. So a group of us started doing it after work, because we wanted to work on something with VR. And Leland, who's our environmental art lead, he was the main guy that was doing it, and he's not a programmer. So Unreal Engine 4, he's like, blueprint, I can make things happen. And so he was able to get a fully functioning prototype up and running in VR without a single line of code. Like the trailer that we showed at E3, there wasn't really any code in there. It was all blueprint.
Wow.
So I think that gave us the flexibility of getting some prototypes up and running, very fast. And we've done a lot with Unreal. So, but the blueprint and the ability for designers and artists to at least try things, that was why we did that.
So Rob, you're going to stick up for Unity, or?
Yeah. Well, actually, to a certain extent, yes. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a creative, so I know just enough Unity to be dangerous. But I'd had a lot of exposure to it in my other job as a creative director at Primal Screen. We do a lot of games for Sesame and Cartoon Network, and so I'd had some exposure to it before and felt comfortable getting in and kind of moving around it, and it definitely was really rewarding very early on. So it kind of got this kind of deceptive learning curve where you can get in and kind of feel really powerful really fast, and then suddenly realize you know nothing.
When you get into production.
Exactly. But my coder is also familiar with Unity, and so it just felt like the right tool for us.
And Gasper, you're doing Unity, right?
Yeah, I mean, strictly Unity, and it's basically because I don't know how to code. And even though there's a blueprint, Unity has a plugin called Playmaker, which is pretty much the same thing.
Sure, yeah.
But what I like about Playmaker is that there's also a community of people that build additional behaviors for it. So I mean, I could be wrong about Blueprint, but I think that once you reach a point with Blueprint, is you either get a coder or you're stuck. In Playmaker, I mean, I could be wrong. I don't use Unreal that much. I've only tinkered with it. Well, with Unity, like for example, 2 days ago, I think somebody just came out with a new plugin that allows you to register gestures. So let's say you want to do a game where you want to do like Street Fighter and you pull out Hadouken, like, oh, like, Hadouken and throw a fireball. I don't even have to code it anymore. They actually have a thing that I just record my movements, do it several times, it will approximate what I want, and I have gestures in my game without having to code. And it will plug it into Playmaker as well.
Nice.
So basically, I leverage the fact that my skills are limited, and I use the community that Unity has built to assist me with my lack of skills.
I will say that too. I think Unity's got a much stronger development and community around it, at least in my experience.
Oh, John, you getting good support from Epic?
What's that?
You getting good support from Epic on this?
Yeah, we're getting good support from Epic. I think one thing I didn't mention, another reason why we're using Unreal Engine 4, I think not a lot of people are doing this right now, but we're doing multiplayer. So multiplayer in VR. And traditionally, at least what I've seen, there's probably somebody that's going to point out, oh, there's this one game, but Unity, I've never seen a good Unity game with good netcode. Anytime I've played any multiplayer Unity games with any kind of latency, not to pick on Unity, I've never used it, but I'm sure it works really well for certain things. But I've never seen its netcode hold up the latency well. And Epic's been doing, for 20 years, they've been doing almost 20 years, doing multiplayer games, and the netcode's rock solid, and that's going to be real important for us for our co-op multiplayer.
Right. I mean, your game is so fast and frenetic. You've got to have strong netcode. So Unity works well on small network, like local network. It's actually quicker to build something in Unity that way. But yeah, when you go up, it's something massive. It's a different story.
Well, the last thing I'd like to explore before we turn it over to the audience and to questions from YouTube is the one thing that developers actually have been working and launched can talk about, and people who are just starting dev can't talk about, and that's the audience. And what is their expectation, and how do they feel about what they actually receive? What kind of feedback do you get? What do they focus on? What are the things you've learned about your audience you didn't necessarily expect to hear? And Ryan, I'd love to start with you because you guys know your audience very well, folks who are going to museums and experiencing rides. So what are you hearing that's different from on the VR side?
We know them well. It's very early right now since this deployment's only been out a matter of a month and a half or so. So, we don't have that much feedback, but it's all been positive so far. We have a wide range of people, all ages, coming in to try the simulators. So I don't really have a big enough pool yet to comment on, but what I can say is that really it's a little tougher for us than straight to the public because we have to go through the guard that is the museum people. They have their ideas about what the customer wants and what the customer needs, and sometimes it doesn't mesh with reality.
What was their reaction to VR when you first brought it to them?
There was a little bit of cynicism at first until it blew up, until everyone was talking about it and everyone wanted it.
I'm
There was
surprised.
cynicism.
I haven't met a single person whose first reaction to VR wasn't wow.
Yeah, and well, I mean, we weren't bringing it to them and showing them at that point.
I think that's the difference.
That
You've
is
got to
that is the
experience it.
difference. It is the key. It is the key difference for sure.
Now, John, for you guys, your release at E3, your release of the trailer at E3 got a lot of positive press. I saw that pop up all over my feed back in mid-June. But what sort of feedback have you been getting from your community that's very much a PC, a kind of classic PC shooter audience? Are they yelling? Are they excited? Are they already complaining you've gotten the guns wrong?
Well, I think, there's a couple of different reactions. A lot of people are very excited to play the Killing Floor universe in VR. I think, it's kind of like for me when I first, anytime new kind of technology like Blu-ray comes out, the first thing I want to do is I want to watch Star Wars on Blu-ray. And so for me, when I saw VR, when I started messing with motion controllers, I said, the first thing I want to do is shoot these monsters in VR. So people are excited about being able to do that. One of the other things that we haven't touched on, and I know you said it was touched on a little bit in a previous talk, but I'll mention it, is there's a lot of people upset about the exclusivity. And it was unclear, when we announced, like, is this never coming to the Vive, or is it only ever going to be on the Oculus Touch? And it will be on both eventually, but it's coming to Touch first. And really right now, I don't think people realize, a lot of the comments were like, Tripwire, you don't need the money, I hope you choke on your blood money and all this stuff. But what people don't realize is VR is really in its infancy right now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's taking a while for the headsets to get out to people. It's going to be kind of like Tesla electric cars when they first came out. There's going to be a few of them, and they're going to be really expensive, and not everybody's going to have them. But electric cars are taking off. VR is going to get there, but right now it's risky to make a VR game. So I think it's important for the platform holders to be investing in the development of games early on, and we've certainly got some good support from Oculus. Some of it's financial, but part of what they've been able to do working with them is help on the technology side. And I mean, they're very responsive. We're like, hey, we're trying to solve this technology problem in VR, and I'll send an email, and later that day I get an email back that says, yeah, this is how we solved this on one of our games, because they're developing games internally as well. And that support has been really useful in helping us. Things that we might spend weeks or months just throwing money down the toilet that they can answer. So right now, everybody acts like, all of us studios that make games are sitting on piles of money, just throwing it whatever. That's not how it works. It's risky right now. It's going to get there, but it's a challenge for developers. You can't spend $10 million on a VR game and and expect to get your money back right now.
I think the analogy I liked the most was VR is where film was when it was a train coming at the camera, and that was the film.
Right.
And we're essentially at that stage.
Yeah.
We're not yet Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton.
And you paid for the privilege to see the train coming at you.
Yeah.
Rob, what feedback did you get from people when you guys launched?
We got great feedback. Actually, we got really good response in the press, and we've continue to get good feedback from people who buy the game, and everybody we demo it for gets really excited about it. So it's been a really positive experience.
What features do people tend to mention the most when they're talking about the game?
Well, that it blows up right in front of your face. The immersion, I guess,
Excellent.
is the number one thing. Like, they really enjoy the immersion of it. They just kind of forget what they're doing and kind of lose themselves in the space and have a good time. That was really, that's exactly what we were going for. So.
What was the term for that you threw out earlier, John?
Presence.
Presence, thank you.
Sense of
Yep.
Sense of presence.
Yeah.
All right, at this point, I'd love to open questions up to the audience and to the internet. Gaspar, we'll start with you.
I actually wanted to add, especially to the last question about the feedback. Many of the challenges that I've seen that happen to me is that since VR is so cool, when you go to people and you actually demo your game to them, you have to be very discerning if they're wowed because of the technology,
Absolutely.
or wowed because your game is good.
Yeah.
Because I've seen some games that are like totally awful, but people are saying, "Oh, I feel like I'm in the game. This is so cool."
Yeah.
And then there's other games, that are definitely much better. So that's one thing. I mean, and it's a constant challenge. The other thing that I've also experienced a lot is sometimes less is more. I mean, when I started my game, I had like, "Oh, you're gonna pull this sword here, you're gonna pull this gun, and you're gonna do this, and you're gonna do whatever." At one point, the player, especially since this is a whole new paradigm, how you control and interface with the game and the environment, you confuse the player. I mean, to the point where it's cool to give him options, but if you give him too much, then the game loses the flow, because the person is trying to figure out what he's going to use, what tools he's going to have at his disposal. So you have to balance out into, it's not about dumbing down the game, but don't just put stuff there just for the sake of it. I mean,
Can I just click on Windows and get to sub-windows?
Yeah, there's a tendency when you first start working on VR to think that I'm going to have the player do everything that they would do in real life. We're like, we've got a pistol and I'm pushing the button and I'm pulling the clip out and I'm searching for the mag and I'm clicking it in and I'm pulling the slide back and meanwhile the monsters have eaten my face off and I'm dead. So not everything that you can do in real life is fun to do in a video game. But you try to do that. That's the first thing you try to do, unless it's job simulator. Then it is fun.
It's a sandbox.
Paul, do we have a question from the YouTube?
Yes, someone's asking on the YouTube stream, what genres do you think best fit VR, since skydiving simulator doesn't seem awful?
Yeah, racing simulators have not taken off yet. I still want to see a Mech Warrior game. I want to be in a cockpit.
We're talking about doing multiplayer sites.
I'll test it.
Same.
Well, let's see. Hold on. Let's get more feedback on what you guys think are genres, game styles. Obviously, Civilization is going to be an odd one to do VR.
I think shooters are obvious with touch controllers. Everybody wants to pick up a gun and shoot something. The other thing that I haven't seen a lot of that I would love to see, hope somebody will probably steal my idea, but detective stuff. I mean, first person, I want to be Sherlock Holmes with the magnifying glass, looking at the thing on the ground because I can, because
First person LA noir.
yeah, exactly. Because one of the things that you find with VR is in a traditional 2D game, we spend all this time making this amazing environmental art, and the player just runs right past it to get to the next thing. You spent 2 months making this level, and the player's in there for 15 seconds in this room. But in VR, people are willing to be in the space, just be there. They're just looking around and they want to investigate. So games that, adventure games that take advantage of that, I think can do really well.
People have joked about any Will Wright game showing up as VR. The Sims VR. But the one thing I would love to see from Will would be his evolution simulator, where you can actually pull, yeah, in Spore, the evolution simulator in Spore, pull out the nose, recreate the creature, put parts together with your hands.
I do think the sandbox experience is going to be really strong. Once the touch controllers finally come out across all the different platforms and that becomes a more mature system, I think sandbox.
I'd love to see a God
There you
game.
go.
Oh yeah, an ActRaiser or something.
Pull up, if you remember Populous, pull up the mountains, push down
Yeah,
the
was it the
seas.
black and white?
Yeah,
Oh,
black and
just
white,
control,
everything.
yeah.
All right, other questions from the audience? Yes.
What about driver's ed? You can help teenagers.
What about driver's ed?
Yeah, we actually talked to some people about that. We've had a lot of people come to us, whether it's the police department for training or other places like for education,
How do you-
for drivers.
How do you guys handle, because you're doing a lot of simulations where things are moving, how do you handle motion sickness?
We don't have that problem because we move them.
Actually moving.
So
with
the
us, I love
inner
what they're
ear
doing.
matches your visual input. Your inner ear and your motion nerves are looking for that input. They're not getting them, but your eyes are. That's why you're getting sick.
Of course, that's why Orion, though, has to be extra careful that they actually line up, because they're a little
Right.
We've got a museum with a very, very messy attraction.
Right.
During the
Windows
day.
covered. in
So that's one of the things
glass.
I've loved about they've done at Pulseworks, is how well they line those two experiences up.
Yeah. It's
You've got
definitely.
zero latency issue there, right? Like-
Yeah, no, we definitely have to have custom software on the hardware side to receive that UDP, telemetry to make sure it's updating.
Yeah, we got to get you into their office to check
Yeah.
it out. It's actually pretty
That'd
cool
be
stuff
cool.
over there.
Yeah, we do it all in the shop out back, build it all in the same office.
Yeah, that's one of the things that if you're not familiar with VR development, there's a real hard to understand term. You hear vestibular ocular dissonance, which is a really convoluted way of saying your eyes aren't what your eyes see isn't matching what your inner ear is detecting. But one of the tips that this is the common things you hear about VR, but basically your inner ear is really good about sensing acceleration. But once you're moving, it stops sensing
Exactly.
anything.
So we can pitch you over 180 degrees and only move you 20.
Wow.
And it feels like it matches.
The eyes trump the ears anyways. There's the far experiment where you look at somebody saying far, and they're actually saying far, and the other person's going, but saying the far, and whichever one you look at is what you hear, even though they're both saying the exact same thing. Your eyes trump the ears every time.
Yeah, as long as there's some input coming in for the motion itself, and as long as it matches reasonably, then you'll be all right.
All right. Other questions? Yes.
What about in the medical profession, surgeons and
Yeah,
Big opportunity.
yeah, we've also,
exploratory surgery?
well, not only that, but recovery. Like we've spoken to a doctor over at Emory who wanted to do some VR for people who had phantom limb syndrome,
God,
say that were ex-pilots.
my brother, Air Force.
Yeah, I was ex-Air Force too.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah,
And
that's all
part two,
possible.
I'm a composer, a CSAC composer, that's the equivalent of ASCAP and BMI, they don't like to say that. I'm a composer looking to interface with video games and video game developers about licensing original music. I score for film and visuals. So I'm looking to break into that, and that's why I came here to just network for the first time.
Cool. Yeah, how much music are you incorporating in compared to what you've done in the past? Are you doing any changes for music?
Sound design as well, I'm sorry.
Well, sound effects, you're pretty much still throwing everything in, but are you limiting music? Are you adding more music? Is scoring about the same?
Scoring the same for me. Yeah, and then everything's the same. We have, a 5.1 surround, and we have dialogue coming in through the center channel, and then we have directional audio.
Are you looking
All
for
works great.
music that's as intense as what you see in films?
Well, it
Genre
ramps.
films?
Well, yeah, we're ramping with the action, of course.
Right.
We want to try that.
Right, score.
I think we're being a little bit more subtle, at least so far. We haven't experimented with it too much. We're being a little more subtle with our music than we traditionally have, because in VR, audio becomes so important. Like in our game, when you hear the monster, you're standing there, you hear the monster walking up behind you, you turn around so you can shoot it. But if you can't hear the monster walking up behind you,
Yeah.
it's a problem.
Yeah, positional
Right.
audio is a must.
So positional audio and being able to hear those things are a lot more important.
I know a good heavy metal musician if you need one.
That's a big part of our
I know a
game,
bad
too.
heavy metal musician if you need one.
That's probably half the experience for our game as well. Like you can play it without the headset on, but being able to locate where, so we actually assign sound effects to things that are flying at you so that you'd be able to figure out where in the space they exist so they don't sneak up on you, just like your zombies.
Well, just like in a movie, you have cue music that would kind of give it away that there's a monster close, or you're alone in the house.
Well, they actually have dynamic music systems now where they can bring in brass, they can bring in strings, or
Right.
take it out again dynamically on a layered soundtrack. So I'm looking forward to seeing more games try that approach.
Paul, we have another YouTube question?
Yes, Valerie on YouTube says, I know this is about VR, but is there any AR plans as well? Because she's looking forward to when you can do both AR and VR together.
There are no successful AR games. Hey, and which team owns this location anyway?
What about
Anyway, so any AR plans from anybody?
I mean, we've dabbled with it, we've dabbled with everything, but no.
You'll want to talk to Ian Philpotts at Microsoft. They might have some interest in the R space at some point.
If Ian wants to send us a HoloLens, you know,
Yeah, sure, I'd love to try that out.
So,
As an example of AR that we did try that didn't sell the guys at the Smithsonian, we tried to make an app where we said, oh hey, you walk in the door, it's advertised, kid buys this app for $2, goes around to each exhibit, scans a QR code, and then you can have a virtual version of that artifact and build your own museum, and then sort of take on aspects of the museum and incorporate them into yours as well.
Valerie, I'm trying to talk Puzzles by Joe into Clutter Go, where you walk down the street and you see trash and you pick it up and throw it out. All right, questions in the back. Shazam.
So you guys were talking that in VR, people are going to look more in a specific room than like regular 2D gaming. Do you think that there may be a market for advertising?
The question is, what is the market for advertising in a VR game if you're more closely examining your environment?
Unlimited?
Unlimited?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no loss of fidelity when you zoom in.
My concern is always what interrupts the play experience. So in
Oh,
VR,
I was saying not within a game experience, as a standalone experience.
Right.
Maybe I want to buy a Mizuno sneaker, and I get to examine it up close, but not actually go to the store. Absolutely.
well, actually, in this room, I got to evaluate the Delta jet I was thinking about buying. Okay, I wasn't thinking about buying, but they were showing us the jet. We had a question over here.
Yeah. So you've already talked about picking up smaller objects like that, but have you explored picking up bigger objects like tables or chairs or anything along the lines like that?
The question is about how do you handle picking up larger objects, like if you want to do a rage table flip.
Yeah.
For you?
no. No, actually, I say no. We did in one of our prototypes the puzzle that I mentioned earlier, where you had to stack boxes up and then get on top of them that we fell off of. They were very large boxes, and really having almost like a Half-Life 2-ish gravity gun-ish type mechanic where you can just pick it up and move it around. Works pretty good as long as it's got physics so that it can interact with the world, because if it can pass through things, your brain starts saying it's fake, your presence starts to diminish. But it worked pretty good, and because you're moving your hand in real space, it's real natural. It's real natural to just pick something big up and stack it.
Did you do a click to sort of mechanic, or did you give them free?
We did like aim at it and squeeze the touch controller to pick it up, like I said, almost like a gravity gun mechanic. Like having to physically grab it and pick it up, we didn't really try that. That probably would work, but
The Hulk game coming soon. VR Hulk. Is there, you got another YouTube?
Jake on YouTube says, console or PC for VR? Are you focusing on both? Do you think because the hardware demand on that VR market is still a few years out?
That's not even for me on PC. We build our own stuff.
And John, you guys just stepped into the console world anyway.
yeah. So personally, I'm very excited about VR coming to consoles, primarily because when you think about having a space big enough to actually walk around, really there's only one room in most people's house that's big enough to do that. That's the living room. So I'm excited about where that's going. I'm still a little iffy on the technology, if it's, how well that's going to work as far as the performance levels of the current generation consoles. But right out of the gate, I think like much of the innovation, we're starting on the PC, and because the performance is there, there's, believe it or not, there's a lot of talk about, well, nobody has a machine fast enough to run VR, and I can't remember what the stats are, but I know that both NVIDIA and AMD have put out some stats. So like, there are tens of millions of machines out there that are VR capable. So yeah, they just need to get a headset.
Yeah, with my first DK on the Oculus, I kept pushing it on slower and slower rates till it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So I was pretty happy with that.
Glutton for punishment.
Yeah. You have more questions on YouTube? Oh, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wondered if there's any just kind of small, maybe unexpected things you discovered that maybe made, wow, something that's not really a good idea or practical for a controller, mouse, and keyboard that, like, actually this works pretty cool for maybe using a weapon or interacting with things that maybe you see starting to open up some interesting possibilities. I guess I'm talking particularly about the going forward.
The question is, are there interface techniques or mechanics that don't work well with traditional interface tools like mouse and keyboard that do work well with the VR controllers?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, I think it's very natural. It's very natural, even, if you make everybody physically pick everything up like right on top of it, it gets a little tedious because, especially if it falls on the ground, people get real tired doing this. But it's, pointing, most people are really, really good at aiming at things just with their hands. So that, just picking things up like that is real natural. The other thing that we found, and I'm surprised I don't see more VR games doing this, but it seems like a lot of VR developers, especially games with inventory or guns in them, they're still resorting to, like, I press a button and I bring up a menu and then I aim at this thing to select the thing that I want to use at the moment. And one of the things we tried and we're real happy with right now is we have, our inventory system is on the player. So it's like, I've got holsters, I've got slots on my back, and I pick something up, I put it here. I pick something up, I put it here. And as long as you don't have too many of those, you don't want the bat belt with 25 different, what was in here? Oh, I don't need this right now. But just 3 or 4 things is, grabbing a knife off your back and slashing a monster, grabbing pistols like this, and, it's real exciting to do, and it feels super cool to do in a video game, and it kind of, it solves that abstraction that we normally like, or, you don't want things coming at you and you're looking at a menu and you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't pick on these guys, but I was playing, Brookhaven Experiment just came out, and I was playing that. And I'm like, okay, I want to get to my knife. Oh, it's a flashlight. I can't slash anything with this flashlight. Oh, and I'm dead.
If I was playing the Green Arrow game, I'm sure I always pull out the boxing glove arrow by mistake. Question here, yes.
Okay, got a couple questions, but one of them will probably wait till later. Now, have you guys explored third-person gaming, or like where the camera it's not exactly first person, but you have the camera up here and you can actually like move the guy in third person, or just look at the game in third person?
So we've experimented with it, and actually, if you've gotten a chance, I was actually surprised. I didn't think it would be as engaging as it is. If you've had a chance to play Lucky's Tale,
I like that.
It's a perfect example of how rewarding it can actually be. You get the sense of presence that you're in the space. You also get to manipulate the character, and actually they have a couple of really great moments that are very surprising and really help you develop an emotional connection to the character, because when you're not doing anything, he kind of turns around and looks at you like, what now? And it's actually a very cool experience. And then like at a certain point in the game, they kind of do this, he goes underground and there's actually a diorama, and it's actually just it's pretty much a side scroller, but in VR, in 3D, and you'd be amazed at how compelling that experience really is. So it's definitely something worth exploring.
I really like the fact that you can like during those 2D scenes, you can like actually look around, and sometimes like part of your field of view will be obstructed,
It's like a thing, but you
Yeah.
can like look
Look
around,
around,
and see
yep.
if there's like a coin behind it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things I'd like to see developers play with is the feeling you get from that third person perspective. It's almost like they're toys. Like it's a toy that you're playing with. Say like in the demo with Vive, you have a ship that you're holding, right? And you're steering it with your Vive controller, your motion controller, and shooting in a bullet hell. And it really feels like, you know, it's a much better version of the toys you had as a kid. You're playing spaceship.
All right, we'll take two last comments, one from Gasper and then one from the internet.
This is more for Tripwire, but anybody else can jump in as well. How are you guys handling damage from enemies to the player? Something that I struggle a lot is, for example, so an enemy's going to kick me. If I actually wait for him to be on top of me to actually hit me, he looks kind of weird on camera, so I have to kind of like make a little bit of a distance. Any thoughts or any...
Did you hear him? They eat your head. The mask actually starts chewing at your face while you're wearing it.
That's 4D.
4D.
That's 4D effect.
I haven't actually noticed any issues with it. I mean, essentially, we make sure that we do the damage at the right time in their motion, so that it feels right. Like if you do the damage when their hand's up here, it's in 2D space it probably wouldn't be as apparent, but in the virtual world it's really apparent. So you have to make sure it's in the right place. I think the bigger challenge for us on damage has been how to display it, because in a normal first-person shooter we would have this massive camera shake that's like it's a tell that tells the player I'm getting hit from this direction, so we push the camera away. And you try to do that in VR, and well, we discussed what happens. But one of the things that, we're still experimenting with this, but what we found is that a little bit of camera shake's not bad, especially if it's translation only and not rotation. Don't make their head do this. Forward and back a little bit, left and right a little bit, up and down a little bit, but don't do this. And don't do this.
No. Are you playing with audio too? Are they groaning and kind of death shivers when they're getting really damaged? Or anything?
Yeah, they're like,
see themselves in the mirror all beat up.
That helps.
How many more internet questions do we have?
We have 2, maybe 3.
All right, let's do 2.
Maybe.
Pick them out. Pick which ones you think should be asked.
So, which VR system, released or yet to be, would you prefer to develop on? Like the Oculus, the Vive, the Gear, and which one do you think would be the most successful?
You got Razer, you got Steam. Boy, is that an early predictive point.
Time to tell the future.
Yeah, and for me, I'm going to short circuit that, because really it's going to be the killer app. It's going to be who does the Pokemon Go
It's just
for.
a platform, right? So
Yeah.
the experience is going to be what tell what decides.
And I'm waiting for vice reality where the machine can actually hit you in the head.
Eat your face when the monsters come get you. Yeah.
Just vice reality.
And I think right now the tool sets are still, are you going Unity, Unreal more than are you going Oculus versus Gear? The limitations weren't you have to worry
Because they
about.
support both.
Yeah, I think you just want to go like as much as you can. Go wherever you can with your VR app and or game, and then let the big companies fight it out over who's going to win.
And last question, Paul.
This is directed to you. When is Killing Floor going to come, or when is Killing Floor 2 going to come out on PS4?
Oh, that's not a VR question.
Is it coming to Xbox One?
That's not a VR question.
I can quasi answer that in this fall. It's coming to PS4, and we're going to announce a date very, very soon. Very, very, very soon. I don't put 3 verys out there unless
Very,
it's
very often.
And Xbox One's a possibility.
There you go. All right, thank you all very much for coming out. Thank you, Orion Cherry, Pulseworks, John Gibson over at Furious Union. Buy all their games. Thank you, Orion, John. Great stuff. Wow, they're really having you on channel for the first time. That's excellent. Got these suckers out a few times.
Oh, really?
It was good having you.